My wife is taking pictures. Yeah, of course. Is Red Bull sponsoring this or something? I feel like I kind of don't want to be associated. Yeah, take it off. Yeah, are we going to be... They were all with the brand facing out, too, which makes me think that we are violating some sponsorship things. I don't want to do it for a joke. Yeah. Oh, that's all right.
And then we have to...
Just in case you need some. How's it going? Good to see you, man. Yeah. Yeah, there's a few available.
Whose is this? This is a good idea, but maybe not for me.
We all had one, and
we took it off.
Maybe I should have a little.
All right, let's get settled here.
for submitting questions to the panel, which you can upvote and downvote as the panel progresses. Feel free to use that, and again, excited to have you here, and thank you.
Great. So we're going to give it just a minute so you all can settle down, and feel free to use Slido already, and we'll get started in like 60 seconds.
Where are my peeps?
I feel like it's like a little debate. You know?
It kind of is, because it's like us versus you guys.
Sides. Taking sides.
Yeah, we're the 721s versus 20s.
Are you also 720?
No. We're exclusively using the Bitcoin blockchain. And we might move away from that, but right now our partnership with Verisart basically necessitates that. And I know Robert who founded Verisart, is kind of thinking about moving more to Ethereum models.
I thought you were talking in crash.
Christina?
Yeah,
In the audience.
Christina?
The hacking hackers.
Yeah.
Just let me know when.
So yeah, they're basically
started when we started.
They're probably going to start it.
We're working on with them. I kind of leave that. That being said, I would love to work on something else myself, but I don't have time.
No, who does?
I know. I would love to do that.
All right. All right, let's get started. Hi there. Hello, Hacking Arts. How are you all doing today? Woo! All right. So I'm an MIT alum. I've been here 4 or 5 times, I think, now. So really pumped to be here and doing this panel today. Before we get started, let's get a sense of who's in the room. How many engineers here? Okay. How many business people? Peeps? Woo! All right. How many of you are new to blockchain? Okay. Oh, good. And how many of you would consider yourselves to be sufficiently informed? Okay, great. That really helps. Okay, so this panel is going to be awesome. I'm really excited to be talking about blockchain and art. That is something that's really close to my personal background. We have John Watkinson here. He founded CryptoPunks. How many of you have heard of CryptoPunks? Okay, just a handful. You'll go back learning more today. He is what I would consider a pioneer of the crypto collectibles world. That really accelerated the world of art a little bit. Wait, let's go back to that. All right, then we have Judy here. She represents the social and crowdsourcing world of art. And we have Dan, who represents the photography side of the world of art. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about myself and why am I even talking about art and blockchain. I'm Arjun Mendhi. I'm the founder and CEO of Mtonomy. Mtonomy was founded out of MIT here. We aim to build the world's most scalable blockchain infrastructure for media. Think of music, film, and images, and so on. Mtonomy was essentially founded on the idea that in the future, any media entity, like a film, a song, an image, can live and sustain itself autonomously. What that essentially means for digital media comes down to 3 things. First, every media entity should be self-aware and be the universal source of that truth. Second, every media entity should be able to monetize itself worldwide, whether it's with applications or individuals. And if that wasn't crazy enough, here's the crazy one. Third, that every media should be able to bear its own expenses, like server expenses, bandwidth expenses, and so on. And if you can do this, imagine simple use cases like copywriting, sampling can be done, streaming, but also complex ones like distribution, syncing, and so on. So that's what we started out with. Team came from MIT, advisors like Jack Dorsey came together. We built this, and in just 9 months, Mtonomy is live with online stores today. So here's a quick example of that. So you can go to mtonomy.com, purchase media content directly in cryptocurrency. Every transaction is settled worldwide in less than 14 seconds. So that's kind of the power of the blockchain that we're just getting started with, and the world is just starting to experience what it can do in simple use cases like these. Now, where it touches art, you can imagine here music has thumbnails and arts and album arts, and we're already working on licensing art. So core research that I'm involved in is very closely aligned with the backgrounds of the panelists here and their areas of specialization. So with that, let's get started. I want to break the next, say, 40 minutes or 35 minutes down into 3 sections. First, we're just going to talk about who's here, understand their backgrounds. Second, we're going to get into core concepts. We're going to talk about blockchain, money, ownership, and all that cool stuff, right? The real MIT stuff. And then we're going to end it with the end game. Where is this going for them and for the industry? And we'll also leave about 15 minutes for questions. So get started with your Slidos. All right, so let's start with CryptoPunks. Tell us what you do and why you do.
Yeah, so I'm a computer scientist background, electrical engineering as well, and but for the last maybe 10 plus years, I've worked as, I guess, what you call a creative technologist, which is sort of kind of a vague term that maybe like the ad agencies created, but it sort of applies to myself and my business partner, Matt Hall, and we worked on a lot of early mobile stuff before iPhone even. We were making apps for the T-Mobile Sidekick, that phone that like flipped open like this, and but we always sort of did kind of just weird one-off projects and just like to play around with tech, and always just kind of looking for maybe like what's new or what's interesting. And so blockchain was one of the things that was new and interesting, but whenever I sort of was reading about it, back, I guess, when Bitcoin first became, a sensation, it just didn't seem quite right for us. I wasn't really a cryptography person, and, it was just money. Like, everyone who was into it was like, yeah, I own some, and that was sort of the end of it, and so it's like, oh, it's not too interesting to me, but then Ethereum came along, and that really resonated, where now it's like, oh, you can build things, you can write programs that now are running on the blockchain, running in this way that no one owns it and controls it. It's just, and there's something really cool about that. And at the same time, I've always loved pixel art. We've done stuff that's involved pixel art in the past. So, and I had these little characters that you see here that I was kind of working on. And somehow the idea came together with Matt too. It's like, we should try to get these so you can buy and sell them on the blockchain, and surprisingly, that hadn't been done with Ethereum before. Ethereum was very famous at that time for just people making more Bitcoin-like currencies, just all the various tokens everybody was making, but no one had yet done, to our knowledge, I don't think it's the case, had actually made unique tokens where each one represents something. And so we undertook to do that, and in June 2017, we launched the CryptoPunks. And so what it is 10,000 characters. There's some examples. 24 by 24 pixel little guys and girls and zombies, a few apes and 9 aliens, and we just gave them away. We kept 1,000 for ourselves, just in case. And we had no idea what would happen. It's like, let's just give them away, and then after they have them, they can people can bid on them, or they can offer them for sale, and we provided in our smart contract, Ethereum smart contract, which we can talk more about what that is. We allowed that sort of market to take place. And we didn't really know what would happen, and in the first couple of days, nothing. We sort of posted it on the Ethereum subreddit and that sort of thing, and some interest. A few people came in and looked at them, and a few people said, this is cool. And But then we got some press, and it was one of those things that we were never good at sort of being our own advocates, you know. And we got in Mashable, there was a headline: "This could change digital art as we know it." You know what I mean? Like, you know, could redefine, like, you know, a real big bold headline. And as soon as that went around, within 24 hours, not only had they all been claimed, but one of them had already sold for $3,000. Which was 10 Ether at the time, so it was like, you know, someone had already claimed it and then turned around and sold it for that, and it kind of went from there. And now it's just a thing that exists in the world, and we've done a lot of work on the website to support it. But what's kind of fun is it's just not ours anymore, right? Like we own some, so those are ours. But other than that, we don't have any control over what happens to it now. That contract is set in stone. We can't change it or add features to it or anything. But there's something good about that too, that everyone knows that the rules and how this all works is unchanging now, and so the CryptoPunks, you know, just are.
That's pretty cool. So if you look at the screen there, you'll see these pixel art pieces, but you'll also see something in print, and we will come back to that.
Yep.
All right, let's go to Judy. Judy, what do you do and why do you do that?
Okay, I am the co-founder of Dada.nyc, which is a social network where people speak to each other through drawing. So as you can see from the slide, we've been around for about 6 years, and basically you go into the network and you make a drawing with a tool that we provide, which is a very, very simple drawing tool. So there's no uploading. Every single piece of art is created on our own platform. So you post, like, for instance, somebody posted this version, Dayglow version of the Mona Lisa, and then the next person responded with the Michelangelo. And then somebody else in another part of the world responded with the Botticelli. And like this, we have what we call visual conversations that happen spontaneously without us intervening between people who can be all over the world. We have people from China, from the United States, from all kinds of places. And, you know, we have been doing this for, as I said, like 5, 6 years, looking for different monetization models. And then on about summer of last year, we started hearing about blockchain, and we thought this is actually something that could work for us. So what we did is basically we called these guys, in a way, like somebody said, you have to talk to the CryptoPunks guys, and they're very, very generously, you know, served as a model of our own platform. So we actually did a collection in October. I think we actually spoke to you in like June or something like that. And by October, we had launched a collection that we called Creeps and Weirdos. We basically curated 100 creepy and weird, you know, drawings that had been created on the platform, and we launched them on Halloween of last year. And we did them through the Ethereum blockchain with 720 tokens. But now we are going to expand our marketplace, and we're going to talk about that also shortly.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's example of work on Dada, right? Crowdsourced art. Mm-hmm. Cool. So let's go to Dan.
Hey, so I am Dan. I'm the founder of Vast. Vast creates and sells the highest resolution photographs ever made. And our goal as a company has been to bring together two very disparate elements of the photography community. You have photographers out there who are wonderful artists creating artwork that's beautiful, these photographs that people want to hang on their walls. And then you also have photographers out there who are technical experts who are able to create images that are thousands of megapixels, which means they can be enlarged to pretty much any size and still remain perfectly sharp. So you have these technologists and these artists, but those two communities have never come together and interacted. And what we've done is we've brought together 12 of these photographers from around the world. Most of us are also computer scientists, to create these images that are both, again, extremely artistic and extremely high resolution. So this image, for example, this photograph is 6,449 megapixels and can be enlarged to about 80 feet wide and still remain, again, as sharp as your cell phone screen. Normal photograph would only be able to be enlarged about 2 feet wide. And there's actually an installation of this exact photograph in the Netherlands that, again, right now is about 65 feet wide. So anyway, that's what we do as a company, but how that relates to this particular panel and the blockchain in general is, like most fine art photography galleries and artists, our goal is to limit the number of these photographs that exist in print form. And the reason for that is because the value in the art world, as it relates to photography, is relevant to how many prints are made. So for example, we will only ever make 10 physical manifestations of this particular photograph. And we have to prove that we're only ever going to make 10 of those. And the primary way that we do that is by issuing certificates of authenticity that say this print that you've purchased, for example, this print in this person's home, is edition number 3 of the 10 that will ever be made. And then we have to prove what's called the provenance of that piece. So we have to track it over time. So to know who owns it, how that ownership is transferred, so that we always know where the 10 of those prints exist and can prove that only 10 do exist, right? And this is a common kind of phenomenon throughout the entirety of the art world when you have forgeries and things like that that have happened over the past centuries. And this is how we're then moving it forward by using the blockchain to be that primary technical mechanism through which we issue certificates of authenticity, prove the provenance of the artwork and who owns it at any given time. So we'll talk more about that later, but that's how we're kind of using this technology as far as it relates to our business.
Cool. So with that background, one-word answers. Who is your customer today?
So I'll start with that because we have a very defined customer.
Yeah.
And our customer is the typical fine art buyer who's looking for a spectacular photograph, the likes of which has never existed before.
Perfect. Judy?
In our case, because you have to buy with ETH, I think we have enthusiasts of ETH and people who like art, people who are interested in this use case of blockchain, art as a perfect use of blockchain. So we have one of them in the room, actually. Jason is a collector. And basically, I think one of the hurdles that we are all facing is to bring this to the attention of more and more people. No? So also I think that for people who are not that familiar with how cryptocurrencies work, it's a really good opportunity to kind of wet your toes. In our case, the drawings are very affordable. And so you can exchange some crypto, take some dollars, change them into ETH, get a MetaMask wallet, and buy. So it could be actually anyone.
Ethereum enthusiast. Okay. And what about you?
Oh, well, we don't have any customers.
Yeah. So, who are your users?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. So it seems like, there's crypto enthusiasts, but I mean, a bunch of people we don't, but there have been some people from the art world who have kind of, like we found out they have a CryptoPunk. We don't know, of course. Most of them, we have no idea who it is who owns it.
Well, it could be traders as well, right?
Yeah, and I think there is definitely, there's a speculator community, certainly. Involved in it too, yeah.
Great. So let's get into the second section of this conversation. Let's roll up our sleeves and now get into the weeds, right? So let's talk about the core concepts. What is digital art? Is it just, any art that you can see in a computer screen? How do you define it?
I guess if I could field this one, I would just define it as something that doesn't require like a physical form, that can be represented entirely digitally. And then, of course, therein is the problem of that means it's also perfectly duplicatable. That there's no physical authenticity to it. It just is data. I don't know if that's what you guys.
Yeah, and digital art has existed before the blockchain.
Yeah.
Right, like people making photographs with digital cameras, or having drawing tools like Procreate or like Photoshop. Yeah. That all could be part of physical art. The difference is that with blockchain, digital scarcity is possible because blockchain allows for the creation of unique digital assets, the no double spend problem. So even though you could conceivably swipe any CryptoPunk or any data drawing to your desktop or make a screenshot, now the fact that they are tokenized gives them a value. And they have authenticity, like you have a certificate of authenticity, you have attribution, because the name of the person who created it is always going to be attached to the piece, and you can transact them. And that is like the game changer.
So you're talking about ownership of digital art, right? So let's talk about that. Dan, what do you think of ownership of digital art? All the art that you're producing, is it sold only in physical form, or do you sell it in digital as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. We do sell it in digital form as well.
Yeah.
And those are sold in licenses, right? And those licenses we also track using certificates that are digital in nature, much like the certificates that you guys use. One of the interesting challenges that we come into contact with, though, is that the fact that we also make physical manifestations of these products,
Right.
are these kind of digital assets, and we have to find a way to authenticate those physical products as well. So for us, we're working with both sides of the table there.
Okay, so this is the next thing I want to touch upon. It seems like the world of digital art, particularly around ownership of digital art and the provenance and so on, it kind of starts falling apart when you print that digital art and sell it in the physical world. Let's start with CryptoPunks and the print that we just saw a minute ago.
Yeah.
What's that story?
Yeah, so we were asked to include some of our CryptoPunks in a gallery show coming up in Switzerland in November. And before that, we hadn't really thought of it, and we still definitely really think of the CryptoPunks as this pure digital entity. But we thought, like, all right, well, what do? We could just print them out, but that seems sort of lame, and it might still be lame actually, but
it's not.
And then we had one idea we were going to go with, but we just kind of couldn't get there. We just didn't know how to do it. Was we wanted to have, because these CryptoPunks are ones that we own and we're selling them. But instead of selling them over the blockchain, we're going to be selling them physically. So we're basically going to assign these CryptoPunks to a new Ethereum address, and we're going to sell that private key as part of the art. So our original idea was to somehow have the private key be built into the print physically, so you had to, and have it in such a way where you had to destroy the print to get at the key, which would sort of feels right, because it's sort of like this print is actually, it doesn't matter. What matters is that, but that just wasn't really feasible. So what we ended up going with and this feels almost like kind of like a bridge of like, all right, there's this sort of old, the old school art world, and new is we got a little CryptoPunks wax seal made, and we're just going to put the private key in an envelope that is sealed with that. So it's like, oh, this is, here's your sealed private key of your digital ownership.
Yeah, we can take a look at that.
Yeah, which you can either...
let's go back to...
Yeah, so there's the accompanying envelope. And
yeah.
So you can either never open that, which is still valid, because once it's open, then the private key will be there. So you could potentially sell this intact.
That's like super futuristic and super old school.
Yeah, that's what kind of we liked about it. It's a little bit of a
time.
combination of both, yeah. But
So do you think that the ones that come with a physical print will accrue in value?
yeah, that's an interesting question, right? Like, I'm the artist. I have to get used to saying that. So I'll sign these and date them and everything, so that they're going to have that, which the other CryptoPunks don't have. But I would like, I guess, the legacy of the CryptoPunks to be the digital, not the physical. That this is a fun thing, and it's a cool way to get attention to them and make everyone think about it, especially the people who may otherwise not be thinking about this kind of stuff. So
it's fun for you because your core value proposition is in the digital world, and you're doing this as as like an adventure of sorts, right? But when a core business is built on printing digital art and selling it, let's talk about Dan's work in selling photographies. How do you make sure that physical photo that I just bought is not counterfeited, or is I am literally the owner of that picture? Because if you put like a barcode or something, somebody else can take it and put a barcode on that painting.
Excellent point, and that's one of the biggest challenges, is making that bridge connection between the digital and the physical. So how we do that is when we make a print, so one of those 10 prints of that photograph, for example, we immediately create the certificate of authenticity that shows the owner on the blockchain, and then we take that address, that blockchain address, and permanently seal it into the back of the print. And so that way, that print has forever and irrefutably listed number on the back that is the address where you can go and see that certificate and see who owns it. Then the challenge comes in, how do you transfer ownership? But
so let's take that example. So if this is a print and I put a blockchain address, it's just that string, right? I can take another print and put the same blockchain address behind it. So how do you know which one of these is original?
Great question. I left off one important point, and that is that as part of that seal that goes on the back, there's also a hologram that's made by a security company that has a bunch of kind of typical typical certificate security measures put in place. So there's microprint on it. If you take a microscope, you can see more details. It's kind of this advanced security hologram that can't be removed. If you try and remove it, it breaks apart. And effectively, that company they're effectively the #1 company on the planet for making these types of hologram seals. So you can't really replicate that.
Okay.
And so that hologram seal also has that same number on it, the serial number of the print and the blockchain address. So that way you have that kind of connection point there.
I would say that sounds like a good solution, and it's probably the best solution you could do. But I would say this is an example of what I call the kind of the blockchain air gap, which is whenever you're dealing with something physical, something in the real world, and you want to represent it on the blockchain, I feel like, and blockchain is all about being decentralized and not relying on authority. I feel like an authority always has to assert itself in order for that to happen.
Really
so in this case, it's that company that makes the hologram, right? There's got to be some authority, otherwise. Because the blockchain, all it is that distributed database, essentially, and the rules that govern it. And so to jump to the physical, some authority has to appear.
So I think that's an excellent point. I'll slightly disagree for the primary reason that, like yourself, the main thing that ultimately will matter down the road is the digital certificate, not the physical print. Because if someone else goes and tries to make a forgery of the physical print, right, we still have the record that shows who the owner is. The owner, as authenticated by us, on the blockchain is this person. So if someone else shows up and says, I have this photograph, we say, no, you don't own that. This person shown on the blockchain owns that, right? So ultimately, all that matters is that digital record, not the physical. Does that make sense?
And I think it's especially good in the case of photography, too, where, once again, it's basically still a digital art where
it's easy to steal, correct. Correct.
Whereas if you're trying to put this onto a physical painting that someone physically painted, then you have that problem of like, well, I physically own it. What do I care if there's a certificate on it or something? You know what I mean? Like that.
Which I think
that's where the real air gap appears.
Which I think is such a good point, and I think one of our big challenges is trying to get the public at large to recognize the significance of this. Because what you just said, you said, well, what do I care? I have the physical thing. And that's what a normal person out there, we in these communities are always talking about blockchain, is if we know what it is, and we obviously do, but most people don't. And so they would say something like you just quoted them as saying of, well, I have the physical thing, who cares? Well, we have to get them to care. And that's what we do as a business, is we try and tell people, this is really important. You might not know what the blockchain is, but the proof of the value of the thing you just purchased from us for a non-small amount of money is contained in large part in this blockchain address. So take care of that, recognize that, and as we get the public more aware of that, I think people will stop making statements like that.
But even in the digital realm, we don't have this problem because we are going to live exclusively digitally. I mean, eventually we could release a high-res print, but we have over 100,000 drawings in our community, and so people say to us, but what can I do with it? Can I put it on my wall? And we're like, no, you cannot put it on your wall, but you can see it in your computer. And of course, there are now either we or other people who are creating these wonderful ways to display digital art where you can share your collection. I mean, it opens all kinds of much scalable ways of sharing your art and collecting and supporting artists than just having something like that is hanging on your wall. No?
So on your platform, who owns the paintings? Is it the user who painted it or Dada?
The user. The user owns their intellectual property.
Okay.
And they can do whatever they want with it. But as we tokenize them, we are going to code smart contracts where, the first sale, it's 70% for the artist and 30% for a community fund. Okay. But in secondary sales, it's going to be, 10% for Dada, 60% for the new owner, and 30% for the artist. And the beautiful thing about smart contracts is that this executes automatically and in perpetuity. So, this is also unheard of in the real art world, where if you are an artist and you sold a painting, for instance, recently, a painting that was sold for $25,000 originally was then sold at auction years later for $2.5 million, and the artist didn't get zero.
Right,
so
secondary market.
Yeah, so this is the exciting thing about smart.
So let's get into that now. When you think of art and you think of the cool things that we can do now, let me get closer. The cool things we can do now with smart contracts, how are you using them? Because you can basically code anything, any logic you can imagine. right? So the simplest use case that I often come across is the secondary market, and a portion of the proceeds from all the sales in the secondary market go back to the original artist. And it could also go back to the chain of ownership as well. So everyone is incentivized to see appreciation in the value of the art, right? But talk about some of the cool things that you think are not as intuitive that you can do with smart contracts and art.
I think one of the biggest things is actually in our business, at least in the physical world, is the primary market, not even the secondary market. Because for us, we have 12 artists around the globe who sell their vast photos through our platform, right? And we do a profit-sharing mechanism with that. They right now, because we've yet to build this, they right now are implicitly trusting us. When we say, we've sold 3 of your prints in the last 5 weeks, and those 3 prints sold for this amount of money, so we're now going to give you X% of that as part of our profit-sharing agreement, they have no way to easily and verifiably prove that right now. But through the use of smart contracts and the kind of public nature of a blockchain, we can then begin to have more trust built into that primary market, which historically has been a bit of a contentious, not contentious, but a challenging trust point in the artist gallery model.
So you're not actually selling in Ethers or Bitcoin, you're just writing the contract.
Correct, because we're selling in dollar bills.
Gotcha.
But then the contracts and the kind of proof of a sale can happen on the blockchain through Ether or some equivalent mechanism.
And what about you? Are there any creative things, Judy, that you're
There's
thinking
all
of?
kinds of things you can do. Licensing, for instance. You know, you can code for, you know, to allow for commercial licenses, you know, up to a certain amount. You can, I don't know, like tell artists, these are the options that you have, that you can decide how you want to, like, people to transact this. Talking about the 721 token, which is really interesting because that's like a non-fungible token. For instance, I'll put an example. Are you guys aware of CryptoKitties? Okay, so CryptoKitties, you know, these really cute collectible cats. There's a company called Kitty Hats that actually does accessories for CryptoKitties. So you can buy your kitty a tattoo or glasses or a hat. And they came to us and they said, well, the kitties should have art. Yeah. So we actually issued that slide that you saw, we issued a collection, that as a collection for the cats to collect art. And this is something that you can actually do. So the smart contracts automatically give us our code, they give them their code, but also the 721s you kind of can layer them, and there's a lot of opportunity for co-creation.
It's actually interesting you mentioned that, because I had a conversation with CryptoKitties, and we were talking about licensing music to the cats, right? So there are these crazy things you can do, like every cat has its song.
That would be awesome. I mean, I have a CryptoKitty, and I bought Las Meninas for my CryptoKitty. I'm very, you know, and it's amazing. But there are more other things, like we are thinking, imagine that it could be cross-platform and that we could, like somebody could animate and you can tokenize the animation of one of our drawings, or you could create a GIF, or people could draw kind of on top of the drawing and you can, you know,
So since we talk about 721, let's go to you. You were one of the pioneers or the architects behind 721?
Yeah, so I guess the CryptoPunks contract was the first of that kind, where rather than being a fungible token, right, like money, where you just exchanging value and ledgers, that each token was indivisible and unique. And so that was the basis on which some people from within the Ethereum community made the ERC 721 standard. And so it's basically the same, except the functions in our contract are called like buy punk and sell punk. And, we're not going to call them punks anymore, but we're just going to use the same. So, so that became the basis of ERC 721. And what's nice with that standard now, of course, is that anything can use that standard, and you can have marketplaces which unfortunately now the CryptoPunks can't participate in, right? Because we were before the standard. But everything else, CryptoKitties, Dada, all that can be on 721, so it can all go together in marketplaces, and it can all be traded for each other and traded in the same environment. So it's a good step. And I think Matt and Eric are working on a generalization of it that allows more market dynamics to happen right within the contract too. Currently, the 721 standard gets rid of all our sort of bidding and offering functionality, and that's kind of designed to sort of come in afterwards. But I think it'd be nice to have an extension of 721 that builds that in, so you have kind of a system, a marketplace built into the standard that can. So if you want to sort of specify how it behaves, you can do that as part of releasing it instead of that being left open.
Cool. So you're using ERC 721 for Ethereum. Judy, you're using ERC 721 as well.
Well, not currently. Like the Creeps and Weirdos collection that we issued was the 720 because we did editions.
Okay.
And so we had like this one drawing has the rares, the super rares or something like that, extremely rares had like 10 copies, but others had 150 copies. And that is one, I was telling John today that what is one of the mistakes that we did is that we issued way too much.
Yeah.
Because people like scarcity. People actually like something to be less available. So coming up, we are going to be expanding the marketplace and we are going to be issuing each drawing as a 721 unique.
Okay, and you're doing licensing on the Bitcoin blockchain.
Correct. So we're doing it through the Bitcoin blockchain right now, but we will likely be evolving that over time. But yeah, right now we are using the blockchain, the
Okay,
Bitcoin.
perfect. So let's get into the end game now. Where do you think this is going? Where is the art world going in, say, the next 5 years? And you're all approaching it from different angles, right? So from your perspective, where is the art world going? Dan, why don't we start?
I think a lot of people are going to find that their value, and this is the case with any technology, their value begins to decline. And by people, I mean a lot of jobs. So a lot of people who've built entire companies or entire careers on authenticating artwork are probably going to not be as special anymore. Now, that's maybe not 5 years, that's maybe 50 years down the road.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of industries that are going to move as a result of this, biggest one being, in my world, the art authenticators, as well as a lot of the middlemen that operate in the art market, between the artist at one very end, the gallery in the middle, and then the collectors at the other end.
Gotcha. And Judy, where do you think this is going? You're in the social world.
Yes, it's very interesting because for us, the blockchain affords the opportunity to really think about a completely new system in which artists can be remunerated. Because we are a collaborative platform and we're a community, we're not using blockchain to replicate the same model where the market decides everything, which will be there, but only a few artists get a lot of sales and then everyone else falls by the wayside. What we're going to try, we want to create an economy based on this art, and so we're going to be kind of distributing the profits between all the creators, and we're going to be incentivizing people that are in the platform also we're going to be issuing a token, a data token, and you're going to have to buy the token in order to buy the art. And so in the end, what this means is that we have almost 70,000 registered users in the platform. Out of them, like maybe 2% are very engaged and do the drawings. But what is beautiful about blockchain is that it's really more a peer-to-peer thing. It's now people from all over the world can find an audience, can find collectors, artists can find that they are artists themselves. So it's really allows to explode and scale an art market.
Okay. So you touched upon tokens. We've not talked about tokens yet. Let me just get your thoughts, John, on the end game, and then we can come back to tokens.
Oh yeah. Well, I would say when we did the CryptoPunks, kind of as an experiment, we sort of fell backwards into this kind of philosophical debate about what does it mean to own digital art? What is all this stuff? And I think what we're presenting here with and what we believe in with this blockchain solution, I think it's not. We don't know yet if this is going to work. All this art can, of course, still just be copied indefinitely, and you can always just have it. And so, will people care? Will a record in the blockchain mean that you own it? We think so. There's reasons to believe that that's the case. It has really nice market qualities that are a lot better than the traditional art market.
So in 5 years, do you expect we will be able to validate that theory?
That's the question. I think we're on the path to that. I think it'll probably still be a bit of a subculture, but it'll be growing. And I think it makes sense. But I feel like that's what we need to do is just sort of prove out this belief that yes, ownership of digital art, this is the solution to that problem of how do you own digital art. We hope this is a solution. It feels right once you get used to it. But yeah, you were saying that your friend's 12-year-old was sort of at the breakfast table this morning saying, like, no, I can just copy that. What are you talking about? So it's like, all right, it's going to take a while.
Yeah, I think it's really an education. It's like changing the way people think about just grabbing stuff without attributing it to artists or without paying for the value that these things provide. And, people will probably get used to it because it will have a value. People have made amazing investments with the CryptoPunks that they claimed for free, and CryptoKitties has also proved to be, like that. So there's value, not only the monetary value, but also the value of recognizing that there is worth and effort and a person behind this content, no?
So let's talk about that value. The core value proposition I believe all of you are providing is an immutable and irrefutable log of ownership, right? Now the question is, where do tokens fall in all this? Do we even need a token to do this? Because from my understanding, for me to create a log, I need to create a smart contract and put it in the blockchain. And I can, if you're doing Ethereum, I can do that with just paying in ethers. So what is the rationale for creating tokens where somebody needs to purchase a token to interact with a platform? So Judy, you touched upon it. Do you want to elaborate what's your thought process behind having a token there?
It's such a good question. We are kind of even grappling with that as well. But because we have a community, we have people who have been creating beautiful visual conversations with us for 5 years. Yeah. And we have a gamified system in the platform. So, for instance, when you see that conversation like that, when you get in, you cannot immediately draw on that because you could do some doodle that would kind of mar the thing. So you have to kind of earn the right to respond to conversations, and people, improve their skill level and they get points. And so in our case, we really want to make this like an economic model for this community of artists. And that's why the token is successful. If we just were to issue a token so that it can be completely speculative and people would say, let's buy the data token, and the minute it goes up, then everybody sells, it would be, that's not what we want. But if you need the token in order for artists to exchange stuff that they have made, for people to buy the art, for people to actually get remunerated for all the value that they have contributed, then we feel it's an undertaking, but we feel that it's worth exploring. No?
Okay. So from my experience, when I look at most, blockchain systems, I find a few things resonate when they talk about tokens with most of these companies. The first is it's a mechanism of fundraising. So you can sell tokens, have a scarcity there, and you can also link it to some sort of rights in the company, some sort of payout structure, and create some value there. We've seen that implemented well with file storage examples. You get access to the network to store files and so on. So one is getting funds. Second is governance, which is giving you rights to manage the company. And third is just to drive a network effect. And the network effect usually is around giving it cheap for early adopters, and now they're incentivized to use those tokens and so on. So are these the three things that you think tokens are mostly used for, or are there other use cases in art which encourage the idea of using tokens?
I think those are pretty, pretty much so. I mean, I think you mentioned governance, and that is important because we intend to be fully decentralized, and that is one way. We have migrated all our drawings to the IPFS, the Interplanetary Filing System, which a name that I love, which is a distributed server. So if we stop existing, people are still going to be able to transact. And so the token, in a way, is a way for this to continue happening, whatever happens. Other uses, it could be, that like artists issue their own token and they can forgo completely the gatekeeping and the curating and the galleries. There could be stuff like that. No?
So we're going to stop at the last question here, then we'll take audience questions. So you can start jumping on this Slido link to put your questions. So the last question I have for you is, what is the biggest opportunity that you see, and what is the biggest challenge that you see? Let's start with you there, Dan.
Yeah, for us, I think the biggest opportunity comes in making the broader public aware of this instead of just having these conversations in circles where we're all technically minded.
Yeah.
And when we get the broader public on board, everything that we're doing here will scale up 1,000-fold. Because we're still in the very nascent stages. So to me, the opportunity is everything we've just said times 1,000.
Okay.
Which is why my biggest effort right now is trying to get the word out to, again, the broader public. Yeah. And there was a second.
Biggest challenge.
Oh, biggest challenge
Just
is
education.
the same challenge. Correct.
So it's the opportunity and the challenge.
I go and talk to my parents, for example, who are in their 70s, and I discuss the blockchain with them. And like, oh, this conference, Hacking the Arts. And they're like, are you some like nefarious person? You're hacking things, right? And that's like ordinary people. And so I think our biggest challenge is, again, getting public awareness in a way that allows us to get over the technical hurdle.
Gotcha.
I agree with Dan, but for instance, anyone in this room can come in and draw. We have no hurdle, you know, it's free for anyone to come in and draw. But the opportunity is really to really see a world where there's true, you know, I know Jason hates the phrase, the democratization of art, but it's true, it becomes more immediate, more direct, you can have relationship with artists. But as Dan says, the biggest hurdle is how are we going to reach the mainstream? Because it is cumbersome, as you know. Yep. Like getting the MetaMask wall, all of that. In the end, it's not that terrible a deal, but it's not as easy as what we're used to in the regular world. So it's a matter of people embracing the technology and using it and start to for instance, you know, get content and be virtuous at the same time, no?
Uh-huh. What about you, John?
Yeah, I think the opportunity is sort of like the mainstream digital art market, you know, exploding and opening up. As an analogy, I remember when I was a kid, my, you know, aunt and uncle went on a holiday. They'd come back and they'd get slides done up, and we have to go over to their house and, you know, they'd play through their slides. You see all the pictures. You know, they wanted to show off their photos of their trip. You know, and probably many of you in the audience are too young to have to suffer that particular kind of torture. But of course, now what do people do? They put it on Instagram, right? Yeah. And now the whole world can see their trip. You know, that far better than just a slideshow in your living room. You know, and so I think a similar thing will happen. You know, rather than just having a painting on your wall in your house, there'll be some way in which you can say, look at this art that I own, and the whole world can look at it. You know, I mean, I think that's coming. I think that's going to happen. And I think we're on to the way that can happen. So, and then, yeah, the challenge is what they say, though. I mean, interacting with Ethereum, for example, it's just a true nightmare right now. Yeah. User experience is just ungodly. So, yeah. Lots of work there. Yeah.
All right. So we actually have people in the audience talking about exactly that point. So let's try to do rapid fire and go through as many questions as we can. And if we have more time, then we can come back to some of these questions. All right. The first question in this sort of rapid fire audience round. What is or could be the role of the government to strengthen the use of blockchain in this new market?
Right now, it's hurting.
Yeah.
The biggest thing right now is GDPR.
Yeah.
And that's especially relevant for us because if we're required to be able to permanently delete someone's data, but if it's immutably listed on the blockchain, that's completely at odds, and we have not found a way to solve that yet. First of all, by definition, the system makes it so you can't solve that problem.
Well, you should.
So it's really a policy question.
You should talk to us. We found a way.
Okay, well, yes, I would love to. A way that keeps it decentralized. Because a lot of people have suggested to us, why don't you just put an anonymous ID up in the cloud, up in the blockchain, sorry, and then that anonymous ID is mapped to a person. But then if that mapping is done in our database, well, then you've completely ruined the whole point of blockchain in the first place.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you have the benefits, but also have that capability? I would, want to talk about that.
Yeah, great point, though. And you've been in this space for a pretty long time. Have you ever found that the government's helping or not helping?
I don't think the government really has been. I would definitely say just sort of the general sort of bad actors in blockchain have been, like that it's sort of put a stain on all the cool stuff that's happening. And in fact, the art stuff that's happened in blockchain has been almost the exception to that, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's real. You can use it right now. It all works. It's good people working on it, and many other areas that's not the case in blockchain. So that's more what bothers me than government at this stage, at least.
It's funny.
I understand the government. I know where they're coming from because of all the other bad behavior.
I don't think they really understand it. They haven't really regulated it well. They're kind of either ignoring it or avoiding it or getting in the way. But what John says, this space feels like a cross between the Renaissance and the Wild West, right? And the Renaissance is the people like us who are doing really cool stuff, who are inventing wonderful ways in which artists can monetize or people can do fantastic things. And the Wild West are all those people who are obsessed with Lambos and speculation. And that has kind of even probably...
There's also an
died down.
intentionally... there's a group of intentional bad actors as well, and which is making the governments really, vigilant. I remember going to a Caribbean island. A government wanted to know, what do we do? Because, your people in our island are buying content from your platform. So what do we do about that? So I think, they're still trying to figure a lot of it out. So the second question in the audience round is, why use Ethereum? Isn't there an issue with scaling? What about other blockchains? Just for whoever asked this question, there is one use case of using Bitcoin here as well. But Bitcoin also has a scalability issue. So let's talk about that. Who wants to take that?
I guess I can field that, but you guys can talk too. It does have a scaling problem, and scaling is going to be a problem in general with blockchain. I don't think, if what you're doing has high enough value, then paying the transaction fees and waiting is fine. So I don't think it's really hurt us yet that hard in the art world. But it is a problem, and a lot of the so-called solutions, like the other chains out there that promise extraordinarily fast turnaround, those of you who are computer scientists know how hard it is to do distributed computing well, and most of those are not real solutions. They're semi-centralized solutions. So I don't think we have much better than Ethereum and Bitcoin at the moment.
That's a pretty good answer.
Not a great.
I think there are a lot of promising blockchains out there. Hedera Hashgraph's coming out. EOS just came out, but we probably need to wait and see. Do you guys agree? When it comes to production-grade systems, there's only Ethereum out there right now. Okay, and Bitcoin, of course. All right, another question here. How do Dada and CryptoPunks make money?
Well, by everyone. How do we make money? Well, we're betting on that people are going to want to collect these conversations. They're going to want to collect, drawings by these artists. We are thinking of many ways, even in which people who are not, who don't draw, can actually come and participate and maybe do their own collections of already existing drawings. Basically, if you love art and you want to possess art, and if you want to even, be, the supporter of an artist, you can do it. So that's one of the ways we have thought of. Like also, we were thinking of offering a service of like encrypted signatures for artists, where we don't we don't do anything. We don't charge artists for anything, but this could be a way in which. There are many, many ways to monetize, but we're going to start with the market.
What about CryptoPunks? Yeah,
I mean, in short, I think Dada is a startup, and CryptoPunks is kind of like that too, even though it's just more of a single project. But so we held back 1,000 punks for ourselves, and so if down the road CryptoPunks is a really big deal, we'll be fine. And I think similar to yours, if Dada keeps growing like it has been and becomes more important, you'll be fine. It'll work out. So it's that very startup model of build a community, and then and things sort themselves out after that.
Cool. Next question: how does digital art require digital displays? Special market on flat screen HD displays to hang in homes and galleries? ? I think what they're asking is, does that require a display, or is it good enough to just own the art?
Yeah, it's good enough to just own the art. It depends. I mean, we have on Dada, you can see the art that you have bought from our collection, and we're going to create a nicer experience, but you can see it on your screen and it makes you happy. But there are companies that are creating beautiful displays like Mural, where like it's, you know, the quality, it's not luminous, the screen. So actually the art looks beautiful, but not only that, you can actually stream art as opposed to seeing always the same painting in the same place. With like this, it could be like Spotify for art, and some companies are doing that where you have...
Samsung just launched a Frame TV. So,
exactly.
yeah, I think it's going commercial.
So a lot of that, there are solutions already happening for that. Yeah.
I think there's another really important principle here that we've been thinking a lot about at our company, and that is that art and wall decor are not the same thing, right? There's no shortage of $100 million paintings out there sitting in a cold storage chamber in a basement, right? So the art is not necessarily solely meant for display. Its value extends far, far beyond that.
Investment versus display.
Correct. And the mere kind of happiness that comes from ownership, right? Like there's so many values of art that extend, again, way beyond just putting it on a wall. But yeah, we don't have the whole art discussion.
Including doing it.
That's correct.
I would just say the first thing people do with new technology is emulate old technology, but then that's not usually how it ends up down the road. So I think just the idea of like a screen on the wall is probably, you know, not the end game of it, at least. Yeah.
Okay, so I think there are a bunch of other questions here which are very specific to individuals in this panel. So if you guys hang around after this discussion, I'm sure people will come to you, whoever's posted questions here that are one-on-one. So yeah, in conclusion, what is your wish if you could get one thing to happen in this space? You mentioned you want education. Do you all agree on that, or is there something more important that is missing in this ecosystem right now?
No.
No?
Yeah, that's probably about right.
No, just education?
Yeah, education and people to be, you know, for instance, artists tend to be cynical. You know, like I've talked to groups of artists, very few of them know about this. They are obsessed with Instagram. And they say, oh, I have 60,000 followers, but no one buys anything. Because Instagram is PR. Instagram is it's not where you're going to, I mean, it may help you get out. But I think people need to be open, actually. Not only us educating, but people really need to be open to the fact that art can be digital and doesn't necessarily need to be physical, and that it can also be a direct transaction between people. Mm-hmm.
Also, I just want to see artists and anyone just doing more strange, cool things with blockchain. I feel blockchain has been a strange one, and compared to other, you know, early tech I've seen, where I don't think it's getting enough play. It's not getting enough like sort of people just messing around, you know, hackathons. Hopefully, everyone's doing that right now out there, but. Yeah, I think we just need to see more weird, you know, kind of silly stuff. You couldn't have said it better than at the MIT Hacking Arts.
Yes.
So thank you all again. This was awesome, and I'm sure you can hang around for a couple of minutes and meet with the audience members who had specific questions. Thanks again.
Thank you.